Good day. This is Marc Bernstein. Welcome to Founders Forum. This show, and this is one of the first shows, I should tell you that we sometimes pre-record, and this show is pre-recorded, and other shows will be live on WWDB in Philadelphia and will be broadcast in both in Radio Land and Ether Land. And the intention of this show is to bring you the stories of founders of business, and in some cases nonprofits or people that move these entities forward in a big way, and to hear what got them where they are, how their stories of what the things that were unique to them and how they built their businesses or their entities, and what stands in front of them and what they're looking to for the future. We think there's some really interesting stories out there, and we're starting with a great one today. And before we do that, I want to introduce my host, Ange Honorato. And we were just talking about this, that we met somewhere in the last year and had some common interests, and that brought us together with our common interests. And she will tell you a little bit about me, but I will tell you a little bit about Ange. She is a specialist in business growth strategy and personal success coach for action-oriented business owners. And she is an expert at reinvention, which got me really interested in her because that's a topic I really enjoy. So good morning, Ange, and good afternoon, whatever it is that you're hearing this.
Yes, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Thanks, Marc, for introducing me to this whole concept and to the show. I'm really excited to jump in and dive into this with you. And actually, before we start, I am loving our new intro music. In fact, it sounds to me like a band that I know of, Frets, Bridges, and Skins.
It is.
And could that possibly be your song, Should I?
It is actually, yeah.
I think it's absolutely appropriate for what we're doing on this show and for the guests that we're speaking with. And, when I hear that song, it kind of brings up for me questions around what should I be doing? What am I doing? And I think that's a really relevant topic for some of our guests to talk about, that they ask those similar questions of themselves and how that related to their business. So great choice, and love hearing you and your band.
I would just say I think it's a future-asking kind of song. I actually wrote it when I was a teenager, and I think about how many times I've referenced it over the years in thinking about my future, and I still do when I sing it live. And and that's a lot of what this is about. So I'm glad it works for the show.
I think it's going to be wonderful, and I'm excited to introduce some of our guests and have some great conversations.
So why don't we do that right now? So Howard Nathan is our guest today, our premier guest, and I'm very proud to have him here. Howard Nathan has done a lot of meaningful work during his career and his life, and he's worked for the Gift of Life donor program for 45 years, and he'll tell you about what that is. And 38 of it, he was its CEO until he retired in January of last year, January of 22. And he is currently the executive director of the Gift of Life Transplant Foundation, and he founded the Gift of Life Training Institute, and he's also the founder of Howie's House, which is named for Howard Nathan. And he's a friend of mine. We've known each other for a long time. He's a really good guy. And Howard, happy to have you here today.
Good to see you, Marc. Good to see you, Ange.
Always a pleasure. So I'm going to start with kind of a thought I was thinking about this morning. I was listening to an Audible book given by a good friend, partner of mine, called The Almanac of Naval. I always forget how to say his name. I am so sorry. And many of you, if you know his name, you're laughing at this. But it is Naval Ravikant, and written by Eric Jorgensen. And if you don't know him, he's a serial entrepreneur, investor, very successful guy. He's 48 years old. And this book is kind of almost rapid-fire thoughts and lessons from what he's learned so far. And I could talk about this for hours. I've gotten so many things out of just less than a half an hour of listening so far. But there was one thing that stuck out with me. I am by trade a financial planner. That's my business. I'm a founding partner in a company called March. And think about compound interest. Of course, I think about it financially, which he also speaks about. But he also talks about compound interest as what are your interests and how do you compound them into your life's work. And in thinking about that this morning, and there's usually one or two things at most that really make you you, that are unique, that you're bringing out to the world. And there's lots of ways to bring it out there. It's by founding something, which all of our guests will have done. It's by, you can do that through media, maybe perhaps like we're doing with this broadcast, but there's a lot of different ways you can do that. But compounding interest, when I thought about it myself, there was really two things that I think have driven me to what I do. One is curiosity. As a young kid, I was curious. They called me Curious George in my family. I was, if you're old enough to know what that, well, I guess everyone knows Curious George. Anyway, and I always was asking questions. And that led me to law school and a law career, but that wasn't the thing that satisfied it for me. But the business I'm in is really getting to know people and understanding their goals and where they want to be in life, et cetera. And the other thing that's always there is the sound of music in my ears. And we were joking about this. I don't mean the movie, and I don't mean the Julie Andrews, but I mean literally the sound of music in my ears, which is always there right now because I heard Should I? That song's going through my head, but there's always something. I saw, we'll talk about that perhaps another show, but Ange and I are both big Bruce Springsteen fans. I just saw 2 shows of Bruce Springsteen. His music has been going through my head for the last couple of weeks. The Promised Land, Thunder Road, some of these other songs. So there's always music there, and that I'm realizing drives a lot of what I do as well, interestingly, because it's not directly what I do as a career. So with that, Howard, I want to see if anything resonates with you, in terms of your compounding interests and what kind of made you where you are. And then I'm going to ask you a little bit about Gift of Life program and the various programs that you're involved with and that you founded. And so if you have, what do you think on that question?
Well, when you talk about compound interest, I think about people's lives and how we influence each other and how we help each other. And so, my life's work has been coordinating organ transplants for over 40 years. And when you think about someone who gives a gift to someone else, and in fact, some people can give, 8 organs to 8 different people. Well, that's 8 families who benefit, not just that one person. And so the compounding interest, if you will, in giving the gift of life is absolutely unique and powerful. So those are the kind of things in my life that I think about, certainly now as I reflect back on, tens of thousands of transplants that my team coordinated.
May I ask you what created your interest in that compounding interest?
Well, actually, I think like a lot of things in life, things just happen. It's not like I had a plan or a goal. I grew up in a small town, Johnstown, Pennsylvania, which was a blue-collar town. And, my father died when I was 9 years old, so, it was sort of like do well in school and do it for the Gipper. And my mother, was by herself and, worked a $1.50 job, minimum wage kind of thing. So I didn't really know what the future was going to be. When I went to college, I thought I would, do the sciences. I was, good into sciences, and eventually go to medical school. So when I got out, I came to Philadelphia. I was on a waiting list for medical school, and I ended up getting a job in research at the Wistar Institute, which is a pretty prestigious place. So Gift of Life happened several years later, which we can talk about. But so the pathway is not always straightforward, but you always have that sort of gut feel of doing good in the world.
Well, you certainly, I know we've talked about it in the past, but I know many thousands of lives have been saved because of your efforts. And it's compounded because I know you've influenced programs all through your training institute and otherwise all over the country. So it certainly has had a profound effect. Given all that, what would you consider, Howard, your greatest success in your life if you had to try to find one?
For me, when I grew up, the people in my life you think about who influenced you, and typically teachers influenced you. So I'm Jewish. The person that you always look up to in the Jewish religion is the rabbi, the teacher. And, they're typically gray-haired and have a beard and all that kind of stuff. And when I look back at that, it's hard to believe that now I have gray hair and a beard. And so when I look back at my career, teaching and mentoring people has been a big part of my life, and influencing people to do what we did 24/7. Really, that's my proudest moment. I was just at a conference yesterday of 240 people from, 50 or 60 different organizations that I was in. I put this conference together on a unique technique in transplantation. And I started the program, teaching about some of the history of how we created this one technique. So that's probably my proudest thing, is to be a teacher and a mentor.
Very nice. I'm Jewish, and we've known each other a long time, but we never talked about the rabbi metaphor. Mm-hmm. But I do know you're truly a rabbi to many, so that's pretty cool. If you had to look at a failure or two that you learned from, or because I think that's where we generally learn the most, even more than from our successes sometimes. What would you? Can you think of anything like that?
Well, I think when I think about where I started out, I had this intention that I'm going to be a physician, sort of like the old Jewish tradition. That's what my mother wanted me to be.
I started as a lawyer, so that was the other one.
That was the other one, yeah. So in my own mind, it was sort of like, I failed. I didn't get it. I didn't go to medical school. But when I fail at things, or I feel like something has gone wrong, that motivates me. And it's like if someone thinks that they don't want to participate, or they don't want to work with me, I look at them and I think to myself, you know what? I'm going to get you. You're going to work with me, and we're going to get the right thing done. And so sometimes failure puts you in that mood to say, you know what? I'm not going to be defeated. I'm going to go and make this work. And in the early days of transplantation, that was a big deal, because it was not successful at first in terms of the success rate of transplantation, and people didn't want to donate their organs when I started, and so we had to figure out how that was going to happen, and made a lot of different changes in the laws and how you put it on your driver's license and things like that, in addition to how to work with hospitals and physicians. So there's a book, The Greatest Salesman in the World, by Og Mandino, and talks about the fact that we're all in sales in one form or another. Mm. So in a lot of ways, you're like the salesman and wouldn't take no for an answer. In some respects, that's right. Yeah, the idea was this was the right thing to do in my mind, that, if you pass away, why not just, give someone a gift? So my thoughts are, if someone says no, well, the next time I'm going to make sure someone else says yes.
So, Howard, on that part, because I'm really interested also in the human capital side of things, if you will, in terms of the human interaction, relationship, communication. So when you talk about, hey, someone's not wanting to work with me right now, what are some of your preferred frameworks? How have you gone about? How do you adapt to getting somebody on your side? How do you create that communication with them? Is it you succeed in kind of showing them value in what you're doing? How do you tap into
Sure.
to what it is that makes them motivated to work with you?
Well, when you're talking about the human aspect of that, I actually did a set of TV commercials in 1987 called The Human Connection, and we created this whole series of commercials about donation and transplantation. It was unique because no one in my position was ever on a TV commercial, if you will, that kind of thing. But when we started thinking about what we had to do for awareness, for participation, and all that kind of stuff, for me, I learned a lot when I grew up in a small town. People work with people who they like, who they want to work with. But it's not that free. It's not that easy. So you have to do your research. You have to know what that person's about. You have to make sure that what you're talking about, you have the knowledge. Remember, I'm a non-physician. I'm not a doc. But everybody I worked with in this whole field for 45 years are physicians. And so to get their respect, I had to know my stuff, and I had to read and research and make sure I knew what they were about and where they were coming from, so that I could give them what they wanted in order to get what I thought was important, and in essence, what I wanted.
I think that's really important because so many people, when we talk about, the greatest salesman, I think there's so many different aspects of business where people think it's about, let me tell my product features and benefits or my service, and you're just kind of promoting what it is that a company has to offer. But, really what you're tapping into is what makes it important for the person that you're speaking to or dealing with, or the compound effect of that, right? So what is the effect of the value add and what's important to them? And I think that was probably really important 45 years ago, and it's incredibly important today because I think people have that personalization that they want when they're either looking to go work for somebody, to buy a product or service, or really just a partner. So that sounds pretty groundbreaking, actually, that you were able to.
Well, I don't think it's groundbreaking. I think it's common sense.
For some people.
Most people think about what's in this for me. They may not directly think that, but subconsciously they think that. And it's up to you to get if you want to get what you want, cooperation, participation. For us, the gatekeepers were physicians in intensive care units to call us. We were like the Maytag repairmen, waiting for the phone to ring. And if they didn't call us, we didn't know about a person who could be a potential donor. So how did I motivate a physician who may be 30 years older than me, who's got all these degrees and all this ego, to get them to make that phone call? And you had to figure out what was in it for them and to make sure that they understood that their patient may have passed away, but they could help save 8 others, which is why they're in medicine, to save lives.
That's great stuff. I also think of high tech, high touch, which was buzzwords many years ago. But the more technology we get, and we're all wrapped up in it today, I think the idea of the human connection of touching people about, I know you had a personal experience in your own family that sort of boosted your motivation in terms of the whole concept of organ donor and transplants. And, I think that we're looking for more human connection, to use your word. So I think on that level, it works very powerfully today as well.
Sure.
Do you want to talk at all about your?
Well,
your
sure.
human story?
I've been in I've been talking about how long I've been in the field, and interestingly, about 12 years after I had been doing this, and my job in the early days was actually to go to hospitals in 3 different, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. We had 126 hospitals that we would travel to 24/7. Get called at 3 o'clock in the morning to go talk to a family who had just lost a loved one or was about to lose a loved one. Very delicate situation. But about 12 years after I started, my sister had liver failure from a chronic liver disease and went on the waiting list, just like, right now there's 100,000 people on the waiting list. And she was just one of those people. And I told my staff, I have nothing to do with this. You guys do your job. She waited about 2.5 years for a liver. She went down to about 83 pounds and was pretty sick and got a liver transplant from a gift of someone, because I know about it, was someone from Chicago. My team traveled to Chicago to do this recovery of a liver, and she did great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And she lived for quite a while after
She
that.
lived about 12.5 years after the transplant. and the liver was
amazing.
working fine. It was actually her diabetes and heart problems that
Other causes.
other causes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an amazing story, and I'm sure that fortified you in terms of your mission as you went forward.
Oh, sure. And, some of the things that happened to me on the other side, if you will. I was always on the donation side and talking to families who just, were in grief and trying to help them make that transition, to see a little bit of a shining light to give life to somebody else. And now we were on that receiving end. So, I sort of experienced that as I waited with my mom and my brother in the waiting room while she was in surgery.
That's amazing. We've talked about a little bit about, and it's a half-hour show, so we've talked about what brought you here, what you've done, and I think we got a really good feel for that. In the short, you've been very eloquent about it. You've given us some really good idea of who you are and where you are. We want to talk about your future after a very short break.
Ventresca Limited in historic Doylestown, Bucks County is the Delaware Valley's leading men's store, celebrating over 41 years making men look their best. Select from leading designers and brands, casual, dress, and formal, Ventresca Limited has a selection you must see to believe. Social or business casual footwear, the selection is great. Casual weekend wear for here or the beach. Shorts, shirts, polos, and jeans. Ventresca Limited has one of the largest selections you can find. Custom alterations are free. Come to Doylestown and see one of the Delaware Valley's largest menswear selections. Visit Ventresca online at ventresca.com. That's ventresca.com.
Okay, Howard, so we only have a few minutes left. I'd like to ask you about, we talked about this, your future vision. If I asked you 3 years from today and looking back, what would have happened in your life in regard to the work that you're doing personally, et cetera, what would you say to me that would make that look like a successful 3 years if we were talking about it in March of 2026, that would be?
Well, I'm sort of on a new adventure. I'm not up all night and being on call kind of thing. So I'm actually having a new experience. I never really did much for myself or my family or for my wife, and we're building a shore house, so that's a great experience. And hopefully I'll be writing my memoirs or so in the front of the Jersey Shore in Cape May.
I love that vision. That's great. We have a couple little quick closing round questions. What's your favorite book?
Well, it's kind of odd. I thought about that. There was a book, the sort of a trite kind of book called Under the Tuscan Sun. And I remember reading it while I was on vacation at the beach and how that sort of came around, became a movie about building a house in Italy. And now I'm, sort of following that book.
I know that book. That's pretty nice.
It's a great book and a great movie too, actually.
Ange, what question do you have?
Yeah, just following the theme that we started tonight or this afternoon with. Do you have a favorite song, favorite musician, and why? Does that play a part in not just what you're doing today, but in your life?
When I grew up, in the late '60s and early '70s as a kid, Crosby, Stills, and Nash were big hits, and interestingly, David Crosby just passed away a couple months ago. And he actually and he had a liver transplant. Yep. So it's sort of interesting. Every time they come on the radio, it's not necessarily one particular song, but it always brings me back.
After all his health travails and everything else, he still had an amazing voice, and he was doing more music at the end of his life than he had done in all the other years.
Yeah, I met him actually. He used to promote donation early on when he had his transplant.
Really?
And I met him, and talked a little bit about his life and career and so forth.
What a great way to tie this all together. We have just thought for the day. Ange, what's your thought for the day? Closing thought for the day.
Yeah, I think, what just pops in my head is just this idea of sustainability. the work that you've done and how you've been able to sustain people's lives. Obviously, a sustainable business has been around for a long time, and I think it's a valuable thing, and we're going to need it now moving forward more than ever.
Well, we thank you all for being here today in our premiere recording. You may be hearing this as our first or our second show, and we look forward to seeing you in the future live on the radio, 4 p.m. on Wednesdays on WWDB Talk 860 and on the internet. Have a wonderful day.
We hope you enjoyed your time with Founders Forum today and you found value to take with you throughout your day. Join us again next week for another episode of Founders Forum on WWDB Talk Radio and always at the Founders Forum show page at www.dbam.com.
It's pouring rain. It's real dark outside. Your heart starts beating really, really fast. You've never done anything so hard in your life. This is boot camp. This is the real thing now. It's such extreme pain, you don't understand how you can finish. I began to feel that there was no way I was ever going to have my title, U.S. Marine. It takes special inner strength, courage, and desire to do this. I was just thinking, I'm so close. I'm so close. And when I finished, I was like, I'm done. I did it. The moment I will never forget is when this drill instructor that I admire so much comes up to me straight in front of me, put her arm on my shoulder and said, "Good morning, Marine."
PFC Summer Volkman became a Marine. Can you? Visit Marines.com or call 1-800-MARINES. The few, the proud, the Marines.
No one should face breast cancer alone. I'm Janelle Hale, founder and CEO of the National Breast Cancer Foundation. When I was diagnosed in 1980, there was no internet and little information available to make an informed decision. Today at NBCF, we help women at every step of their breast cancer journey. Early detection saved my life. It could save yours too. Learn more at nbcf.org/hope.